Hello again, and welcome back, everybody, to Pro Football Plus. Hope your new year is going really well, no matter which side of it you're watching this on. Shane Ratliff is here with us again tonight. I am Ben Parker, and this is Pro Football Plus. We've got so much to get to tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the playoff race heading into the final week of the NFL season, some things we might look for there. The main meat of tonight's show, which some of you may have seen on the headlines, and while you're over here tonight anyway, will be the New England Patriots offense, kind of looking forward to the offseason, what we like, what we don't like. So we'll spend the most of our time on that tonight. If you want to fast forward by chance through the playoff stuff and get onto the Patriots stuff, kind of move ahead, maybe the 6-7 minute mark, somewhere in there, we should be getting into that. And then I've got a very special final 60-second segment tonight as well. Austin can't be here. He's off New Year's Eve and stuff like that, but he will be back next week, according to all of our plans. Shane, how you doing tonight, man? Do you have any New Year's plans, or are we just going to go home and relax?
Yeah, my family's normally a go home and relax. Maybe do some quick appetizers and things like that. My daughter generally likes the bands and things that play depending on which rocking New Year's Eve you're on. So we normally do that, and then she has some sparkling grape juice at as late as she
Oh
can
yeah.
handle it, and then we're out for the new year.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in a little bit the same boat. I'm not a big New Year's celebrator. In fact, I'm a zero New Year's celebrator, but I like it. I'm always up past midnight anyway working. So if I remember just short of midnight, I may roll over to the channel and see if I can see a ball drop or a celebration or something, just to kind of celebrate with everybody. But I'm not going to do much more than that. After that, I'm going to roll back over to film study of Will Johnson or something like that, and maybe the Patriots defense. But I do like to say, hey, celebrate the new year a little bit, and just be thankful that we get to see another year, right?
Hmm.
Let's jump right into this playoff race, okay? We're not going to lay out every scenario, and we're not going to talk about every possibility tonight. But I got a few of the major things up on the board here. I've got the NFC South over here. Got the Buccaneers and the Falcons both involved there. Got the in the NFC, the 6 and 7 seed with Washington and the Packers, both in play here. And then at the bottom, I've got kind of two combined. The final playoff spot for the AFC still up for grabs. You got three teams in the loop for that. But you also got the Steelers and the Ravens kind of sort of fighting out for that AFC North battle as well. What's the most interesting thing to you on this board? What are you looking ahead to the most this weekend? Having just a little bit of technical difficulties, but I think Shane's back with us now. Shane, I don't know if you heard the question or not, but what's the most interesting thing here to you off this playoff board?
Yeah, I picked you up on the very end of that, Ben. I mean, for me, I think it's the 6 and 7 seed in the NFC because actually it's because of the 1 or 5 seed. With the way the NFC plays out, you're going to have teams that have 14 wins that are going to be a fifth seed. So, I mean, if you're them and you get a chance to kind of pull that back, I find that very interesting for them. Um, Especially with the way Washington's been playing of late. I really wouldn't want to have to see them in one of those spots. I think that's the one that sits out when you're talking about like the NFC South winner. It's kind of a mixed match, but again, Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield's super hot right now, so it puts you in a tough spot on where you're going to pull that. And uh, the AFC North has been this the entire year, so I think we all kind of thought that it would come down to this with the Bengals getting as hot as they have lately. Uh, I think it really comes down to Joe Burrow. If he can really continue this streak, I would not want to play Cincinnati regardless of where they end up.
Nobody wants to play Cincinnati right now. We know the defense is bad, but Joe Burrow is good. I mean, real good. I mean, playing some of the best ball we've ever seen, kind of good. So, yeah, nobody wants to play him. Next week, by the way, for our audience, when Austin gets back, we're going to start our new contest, and we're going to pick the playoff winners throughout. We're going to talk about what all we might see, a bunch of upset possibilities over in the NFC side. But you're right. We've never seen 14. We haven't usually seen 14 wins as a 5 seed. It's insane right now what's happening with the NFC. I am interested, though, and you mentioned that Joe Burrow with Cincinnati. That's the thing I'm interested in. Now, I think Kansas City is gonna be sitting all their starters or most of them for most of the game. Denver's got an excellent chance to win that, but if they don't, the door opens wide up for a good Cincinnati team playing at home, on fire with Joe Burrow, coming back to life, and if they work their way in, that's what I'm interested in. So that Steelers Bengals game really is for me the thing I'm most interested in. Not only because you got the Steelers trying to still catch that division, but man, if Cincinnati can work their way into the playoffs because of Joe Burrow, everybody is going to be scared to play them, no matter how
Mm-hmm.
good a team you got on the AFC side. So, what's one thing here that you want to see happen? Just man, just based on your own, I want to see something here actually happen. What's one thing off the board that you really would love to see?
I mean, the one that jumps out for me, like I already mentioned, the Commanders. They're really interesting to me right now, just with where that team's come from to what Jaden Daniels has that team playing like now. The other one that jumps out to me, and you mentioned them already in connection, is the Denver Broncos. Peyton didn't have a good run of it with Russell Wilson. It seems like he and Bo Nix have some work together. They have a highly underrated pass rush that kind of is a no-name defense for the Orange Crush of late. Uh, and when you get in the playoffs, if you can pressure quarterbacks and play pretty decent defense behind it, they have strong corners. And if Bo Nix and that offense can continue to score points, the Broncos would be another team that I think kind of jumped the gun for how well they've played this year. I think them and you know the Chargers are the two teams that you thought maybe next year might be the year they could pop into the playoffs and make something happen, but they're probably a year and ahead.
I would agree about them being a year ahead. What I want to see Washington get the sixth seed. No offense to Green Bay, and I'm not trying to smash Green Bay, but Washington is doing so much better than what a lot of us thought they would do this year with Dan Quinn first year, with the rookie quarterback, and with a kind of still sketchy defense. And yet, I don't want to see them get the seven and end up going to Philadelphia and just
Mm-hmm.
getting knocked out with, it's just a tough way to go out, right? So I'd much rather see them catch the six and have some kind of a decent chance in the first round to continue some of this fun, even though I don't have them as a Super Bowl team. That's what I want to see. And I really want to see the Broncos get in the playoffs, not because I necessarily think they're going to do a lot of damage. I just feel like they have worked so hard. Peyton and his whole staff have worked so hard this year to put all the pieces together, and they've kind of earned it. And then if Cincinnati were to kind of work their way back in here with Joe Burrow just being on fire, I would hate that for Denver. Okay, I really would. If Denver's going to lose, though, I want to see Cincinnati hop in there. I don't want to see the Dolphins hop in. No offense
Mm-hmm.
to Dolphins fans, and I'm a fan of the organization, although not necessarily the personnel people. So give me Denver. If Denver can't do it, give me Cincinnati and give me Washington in the six. That's what I want to see. Anything else here? We're not going to cover everything. Anything else here on the playoff race before we jump
I
into the
think
real
the
meat
other
of the night?
interesting that comes from this, Ben, is, and you mentioned Cincinnati. There's a lot of Cincinnati fans that want some coaching changes and some big moves made in Cincinnati. And now, they'd also love to see Joe Burrow keep playing. So, you're in that boat where you make the playoffs, and does Zach Taylor get another year because, hey, he made the playoffs? But everyone who's watching the games go, if you had anybody besides Joe Burrow, you'd be the Jets right now. Burrow has hit a hot streak like nobody else. It's really him and Josh Allen right now that are playing, above everyone else. And I think really Burrow and Chase are even above that. I think Josh Allen is a better all around, but Burrow has that offense cooking. So this is the time of year where you're if you're a fan base and it hasn't played out the way you wanted to. Sometimes it's tough to make the playoffs and then end up a first round loser, but it buys your coach and some of your GMs another run.
It's real hard to fire somebody after they made the playoffs unless that playoff was not, that Super Bowl was what was expected, right?
Yeah.
So Yeah, I'm with you. If Cincinnati Bengals make the playoffs, everybody's probably safe there for another year, head coach, GM, etc. So, all right, we're moving on. For those of you in the audience who tuned in just for this, Shane's favorite team, the New England Patriots. We're going to cover them tonight, but just the offensive side. We don't have enough time to cover the defense too. We'll try to get to that here in a few weeks. We want to focus on the offense, Shane, and I want to talk about several things. I'll go through some stats here. I want to talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, what maybe to look for next year in terms of starters and in terms of maybe a couple of backups, maybe a couple of free agents, and then the money side a little bit. So we're not going to cover everything tonight. We're going to get pretty intense here for the next 10, 15 minutes. And I'm going to start here with the offensive rankings because we all know that the Patriots offense was not good this year. That's not a secret. We're going to talk about, as we get into it, again, what we liked, what we didn't. But here's the offensive rankings first of all. Points per game on the whole year, they were 30th. Yards per game, 29th. Passing yards per game, it's all down here in the bottom right if we can't locate it. Passing yards per game came in at 32nd on the whole year. Rushing yards per game, more middle of the pack, checked in at 14th. And then you had some kind of mixed numbers here. The EPA actually liked the Patriots' offense better than some of these raw statistics, right? So you got them at 22nd there. Turnovers per game or turnovers on the year, they check in at 20th, which isn't great, but it's not horrible. Red zone wasn't good, 30th there. And then on third down percentage, not a surprise here, third down percentage of 26th, which pretty much goes hand in hand with any struggling offense because you're just kind of usually going to be behind the chains, right? So that's more of a symptom than an actual cause. But again, struggling there on third downs. I'm going to get to these two charts here in a second, but I just want to talk to you for a second, Shane, first. What's one thing that did work this year and that you did like and that maybe the Patriots can kind of carry over into next year?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, and you know this from our off-season talk, Ben. I thought Drake May was the weaker of the quarterbacks. In that selection, wasn't super happy for him to be the pull for the Patriots. I thought there were other ways you could go. I was more of a JJ McCarthy run for that spot, but if you're a Patriots fan, I don't know how you can't be pleased with the way Drake May's played. I think he's shown talent. He's shown toughness. It also seems like the rest of the offense is buying in around him. So, I mean, you have to be happy for that. I would have said in the very beginning of the season, the run game, but then it became just fumble central. And I think that really
Yeah.
dropped it down. And a lot of that, in the beginning of the year, I would have thought that a lot of that would have become from the offensive line just not being up to the level that it has been for the Patriots for the last couple of years. But like I said, a lot of that is fumbles, and it's not necessarily that you're getting hit in the backfield. It's that you're just not protecting the ball. So that's kind of the weakness on that side. Like you said, I don't think there's any way you can look at the offense and be happy with it. I think you have to pick and choose your elements. And I think it's tough for Alex Van Pelt to be able to really take a hit for this because the Patriots haven't drafted a quality wide receiver. Uh, I mean, maybe ever. It's really hard. The guys that they've found that have played well for them, Julian Edelman's, those type of Patton, those guys, even Deion Branch, you find later in the draft. Their first round draft wide receivers have not panned out for them.
Yep.
And like I said, with the offensive line not being as strong as it is in years past, this offense took a real hit this year.
Let's talk about that for just a second because I mentioned points per game. I think they finished 30th, 31st, something like that. This is just a quick look at how they did week by week. You can see right here, weeks 3, 4, and 5 were just a disaster, right? And that was when they
Yeah.
were really starting to consider, hey, maybe we should do something a little different here. It never got good, but at least you started having stability. So instead of being down here around, say, 9 points per game average or, 16, 17 points per game average, you look at it over the second half of the season, you really at least could count on most weeks 17 to 20 points, in your average week. You're at least giving yourself a chance to compete in these games instead of getting smoked in some of them. So
Mm-hmm.
I liked the stability, even though it never got up above a certain level. I mean, man, you're looking at what 25 points is the high mark for the year. I
Hmm.
mean, and then of course, the week 17 wasn't good, but just all this right in here. At least
Yeah.
you're looking stable. So I like that part of it. Now, we've already talked about, we'll get in the roster in a second, but considering that the roster had its limits, Gerard Mayo's first year, Alex Van Pelt, how do you feel about them handling everything? Do you feel better than you did in the off season? A little worse? It's tough to get a read, but how do you feel on those two guys so far?
I feel worse. I
Okay.
thought the Jared Mayo experience would go a little bit better. A lot of talk of is he losing the locker room and things like that. I've never been an Alex Van Pelt guy. Not when he was a backup quarterback and not as an offensive coordinator. Um, the thing
Mm-hmm.
I find most interesting, and I'm happy with the way that you built your graphs, Ben, actually, because you just mentioned the points per game. If you slide down and look at that yards per game,
Yep.
even as the points jumped up, the yards per game did not astronomically rise. So what's that telling you? That means that in the offense before Jacoby Brissett, you're dinking and dunking and not making any downfield plays where you're not getting any points. Now, Drake May is not getting a ton more yardage out of those games, but in some of those weeks got 25 points where before you were lucky to get 3. That to
Right.
me is an offensive coordinator issue. Are you not pushing the ball downfield? Are you not trying to make things happen? Uh, I did not think Jacoby Brissett was going to be your answer anyway, so I wasn't real surprised when the offense struggled. But I think there's a lot to be said about how you're attacking. Um, and I think teams know exactly what the Patriots are going to do, and that's what makes it easier for them to keep them out of the red zone.
That's an interesting point you make on Alex Van Pelt. And I appreciate the honesty because not every show is going to do that. We'll provide that here. I'm not a huge Alex Van Pelt guy either. Listen, I'm old as dirt. I get it. I watched him play in college at Pittsburgh. Okay,
Yeah.
but I'm not trying to smash him here. But I really would like to see a little more innovation, a little more creativity. I'm not asking for crazy, stuff what the Detroit Lions are doing, but I would like to see them mix it up a little bit more, be a little more innovative, confuse the defense a little bit more. And you're right, the yardage thing was a problem all year. I'll get to a little bit more yards per game here in a second. But I'm just not a huge fan. I don't know that I've seen enough of Gerard Mayo, to be honest, here as a head coach to have much of an opinion there. But Alex Van Pelt, the body of work, he's not horrible. I'm not suggesting that, but still, you mentioned the yardage thing. You would like to see a little bit more. So I'm with you there. If I'm going to pull
Well,
out something, I'm sorry. Go ahead, jump in there.
I was just going to say, like, third down, throw the ball to Hunter Henry. Uh, is you can only run that so many times before everybody knows Hunter Henry's getting the ball. I mean, you can do it when you have more tight ends, which is something that the Patriots used to build up.
Right,
But like I said, I mean, Alex Van Pelt had this is the same problem he's had as an offensive coordinator. It's why he's available to be another offensive coordinator. And like you said,
right.
I'm not asking for Ben Johnson. I don't need fake fumbles and tackle eligibles and everything
No,
like that. But I mean, we're not even running mesh concepts. We're not trying to get wide receivers open.
right.
Um, there's a bunch of different ways that you can switch things up and give some shots, and haven't been happy with the way the offense has progressed.
There are, and again, I'm not suggesting that he's awful, but when you look at say what Sean Payton did this year as an OC, as a play caller, and you look at what Kevin O'Connell did this year as a play caller of the Vikings, we're not even going to mention Ben Johnson what he's doing, and you look at what some of the other guys are doing, and you look back at the Patriots offense, and it's a little bit on the boring side, a little bit on the
Mm-hmm.
we need a little bit more here from somebody side than what we're getting. So I'm with you there. If I was going to pick out one thing I did like, just to give me a little bit of hope moving forward, and I'm going to put this probably on Drake May more than anybody. I'm going to draw for just a little bit for a second here, make it mess everything up just a little bit. But right in here, yards per game, starting in about let's just go with week 10 and then go all the way through week 16. So right in here, you did see a bit of a jump right here. They struggled the first 9 weeks to even get more than 300
Mm-hmm.
total yards per game, which is lousy. I mean, that's not even average. That sucks. let's No ifs, ands, or buts about that. They at least started working their way up here over those 6 weeks right there into the 380 category, the 422 category, stuff like that. So I'm at least going to pull out a little bit of hope right there that hey, somebody was working on something, and to me that's mostly Drake May. I don't really want to give Van Pelt too much credit on that. I think it's Drake May
Hmm.
growing as a quarterback. Would you agree?
I do. Like I said, the thing is the offense didn't change with Drake May. They didn't. They're running the same exact sets that they ran with Jacoby Brissett, which normally you would see like a progression in how you're going to run that, or you go like, oh, he's more athletic. We're going to change how it is.
Right.
Maybe he has a more lively arm, but they're
Mm-hmm.
running the same set. So, like you said, a lot of that though is that Jacoby Brissett, as opposed to throwing interceptions, he would check down. So you're not getting the turnover, but you're getting the third and out every time because you're not getting anywhere close to a first down.
Yep.
And that's one thing that Drake May turned around. All of a sudden, instead of having a 3-play drive and then you're punting, Drake May got you to 11 plays. And then now we have a chance to kick a field goal, or we've at least let our defense sit for a couple of minutes to
Right.
give them an opportunity. Like you said, that's that week 10 where he started to make some of those moves.
Mm-hmm.
The game against Tennessee, he makes some incredible plays. You don't expect him to have to run around 3-4 times and then throw a back of the end zone fade to get a touchdown, get 2-point conversions, things like that. That's not what you're looking for out of the offense, but those are the things that he's capable of doing. Austin, like to mention it, he did an awful lot of background on Drake May. He had the arm talent. He's shown again that he has the arm talent. For me, it was always, is he going to make the right decision? From what I've seen from the offense on this, I question Alex Van Pelt a lot more than I question Drake May's decision making. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
in college football, a lot of times you can throw guys open. In the NFL, there is a very slight window because the DBs are the most athletic people you're going to find in organized sports. You're going to need to
Mm-hmm.
be able to get that ball there. I think Drake May has proven that he can get the ball there, but I think we're doing a terrible job of making it easier on him to find those windows.
See, and I think you make a great point there where the offense looked, the play calling looked the same for Brissett as it did for Drake May. It should look a lot different. Obviously not change the whole playbook, but still consistently play in and play out, it should look different. It shouldn't look the same. So I agree with you there. Let's talk about some actual players here for a couple of minutes. I've got what would be considered to me basically the 11 or 12 starters. Now they didn't all start all year because of injuries and whatnot, but this was the guys that I look at and I say, hey, these were the most consistent players or should have been had it not been for an injury. So again, this is all moving picture stuff. Drake May at the quarterback spot. I grade him, and I got B view here. That's my grades. Grade him out as a C. That just means good, solid starter. Hopefully, take a step up next year. Ramondre Stevenson, C level, B minus is where I got him. I've got the 3 wide receivers here. So you got the Mario Douglas, Keyshawn Butte, and then Kendrick Bourne. We can argue about the grades all we want to, but as you've already mentioned, it's not a great flock of receivers here to say the
Yeah.
least. So we'll jump back in on that in a second. I got Hunter Henry here and Austin Hooper, both the tight ends. Henry's obviously the main guy. I think he had 800 snaps. Then Hooper came in for another 400 or so snaps. Both good, solid contributing guys, but not necessarily game breakers. And then we'll talk about or not talk about the offensive line all you want to, but nothing overwhelming here. There's no superior talent unless Drake May takes that next step next year. So, how do you feel about this group of players? What's something you did like out of this group of guys right here?
Well, first of all, I'd say, Ben, I'm pretty close on your grades. Um,
Okay.
on the wide receiver end, I may have gotten even lower.
Okay.
Just because, like I said, I think you listen to any of those names and you look at what they can do, and I don't think even to start, none of those guys
Right.
is a number one.
No,
So when you start
no.
at that, it's hard. Even if
Right.
they play above their heads, you make yourself to a B, and you don't have a single A player out of that deal. Um,
Right.
I I like where you have David Andrews. I think there's a lot of times where I would put him in the A category, but the rest of the offensive line around
Yeah.
him is so bad that there are times where I think your average fan watches the game and thinks he's made a mistake, but what he was actually trying to do was
Right.
do his job and somebody else's job.
He is.
Um,
Both sides.
you,
Yep.
yeah, you definitely see it in the pass game. The defensive backs are coming in on blitzes. They're moving people around because they know that he's the only one that's going to hold his ground.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think, like you said, a younger Hunter Henry, I'd probably have him ahead, but he is winding
Right.
down. So, producing probably B numbers, but he is a C grade for out there.
Right.
Um, I the problem is that you've wasted some high picks on a lot of these guys that you're looking at on this list.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's the rate of return that you're getting for those draft picks. This was a Patriot problem. This doesn't sit on Jared Mayo. This doesn't sit on Alex Van Pelt.
Right.
This is not having a GM other than Belichick for multiple years now, where you didn't have somebody that kind of stepped in. And like I said, on the wide receiver end, they haven't had a good wide receiver in forever that came as a
Yeah.
draft pick. And that was not a fifth or sixth rounder. Um, they've really struggled with offensive linemen picked in the first two rounds that haven't panned out for them. And it looks like that's going to happen again with some of the moves they've made before.
It's really amazing because listen, Belichick is one of the all-time great head coaches and team builders ever, and yet toward the tail end of his Patriots time, his drafting was really struggling, and we all kind of, he made some of those draft picks like the Strange from Chattanooga, and you're like, well, it's Belichick. He knows what he's doing, even though we're all raising an eyebrow. Here we are 2, 3 years later on some of these picks, and it seemed like, well, he didn't know what he was doing on that section
Well, and
right there is really struggling.
I think you bring up an interesting point with that too, Ben. The thing that people don't talk about a lot with Belichick is I think throughout his career, he made some iffy draft picks, but he had high end coaches that turned
Yeah.
those iffy guys into suitable players.
Yep.
Dante Scarnecchia did a great job with that offensive line. You had guys that, they took uh, NCAA wrestling champion and turned him into a two-time Super Bowl champion. You took an undersized Matt Light to being known as one of the better left tackles in the game. They've made some moves where Sebastian Vollmer, they took some guys that needed some training. Uh, Julian Edelman, was a quarterback at Kent State. He played defensive back for them. He returned kicks. He played wide receiver. They moved people around, and as that
Yeah.
coaching staff, as we've talked about, guys that got picked that maybe didn't do a great job as head coaches, but were great as the lieutenants under Belichick. I think that really affected. I think a lot of years people thought that drafts turned out okay because the players ended up playing well, not because it was
Yeah.
the right decision made by the above.
No, see, and I 1,000% agree. You're 100% right. I've never looked at the Patriots and thought, hey, great drafters, or even very good drafters. I thought, hey, nobody's better at game day scheming, and nobody's better at putting a player in a role that fits, and nobody's better at developing guys. But boy, I mean, if you were to go back, say, to '04, maybe '05, I thought their defensive draft picks were pretty good. But after that,
Mm-hmm.
you get about '08, '09. From then on, I thought the drafting was down here, low, and still they were good at developing and putting guys in a spot and using them, their little skill set. But man, I think you're right. I think you can go back maybe 15, 17 years before you really have any
Mm-hmm.
consistently good drafting here out of the Patriots, even though they were still winning, right?
Yeah. Like you said, one drafted after three back surgeries that they think Gronkowski was going to be the number one tight end. You know,
Right.
uh, you make some questionable calls in there and ended up working out for you. Like you said, I think defensively Belichick drafted well. He's made some diamonds in a rough, and he's also
Yeah.
picked some guys that panned out in the top end. But I hate to keep coming back to it, but wide receiver is the number one. The
Mm-hmm.
amount of terrible draft pick wide receivers where not only did they not stick with the Patriots, but they were out of the league in 4 years.
Yeah.
I think they take the cake for that.
Totally right. I don't think there's a single team out there more so than the Patriots, who if the player left New England and went somewhere else, the performance dropped almost every single time. I
Hmm.
don't think there's another team out there that they look good but good at the Patriots and look worse somewhere else. Saw it so many times over the years. Talk a little bit about this offensive line here. Um, I don't even know where to start here. Okay, it's a mess. So, David Andrews, do you think he'll come back next year? What's his health like? The tackles are dreadful to me, but maybe you see a little hope there with Badarian Lowe and Devontae Jacobs, and then Micah Onwenu and Layden Robinson. Is there anything really to work here with for next year? But when you look at injuries and performance,
It's hard to find a silver lining in it, Ben. I'm not
okay,
gonna paint a rosy picture of that. Do I think Lowe maybe has a chance? With some
okay,
more time. Um, I mean, you look at Jacobs; he's a free agent anyway. Um, I think, like you said, I think David Andrews, you're gonna play him until the wheels fall off, and
right,
that's gonna be a decision
yeah,
made by him. Uh, but I think you need to look to change. Not, I think the other thing is you need to decide what you want to be as an offense.
mm-hmm.
You don't have any road graders. You don't have any guys that are great at pass protection. So if you're not good at either one of those things, what are we going to hang our hat on as an
Right,
offense? You know,
right,
if you look at the teams that pull this off. So like we mentioned Philadelphia before, you have giant tackles,
yeah,
giant guards, and a movable center that allows you to
uh,
do whatever you want.
right,
Then you can go with the Chargers. You take two really solid young tackles and you go, okay, that's what we're gonna do.
yeah,
We're gonna do a bunch of different things up front, but when we need to throw the ball, I'm gonna trust those two guys. There's no game plan when you look at this offensive line that you can put it together. I
yeah,
can't run the ball up the middle because I only worry about David Andrews picking up his guy and nobody else helping him. I can't run to the outside because I don't trust that the tackle is going to set the edge.
right,
Um, I obviously can't pass protect. That's been shown. Drake May does a great job of running around trying not to die. So where do you build that? That's for me. I think that's where people lose. uh, Everyone wants to draft the beautiful left tackle, the guy that's going to do that.
yeah,
In my mind, in the game right now, I would rather do, and a team that you talk about an awful lot, Ben, Kansas City. Would
yeah,
they love to have great tackles? Yes, they would. But what they did
absolutely.
was made some excellent moves to shore up the middle of that line and
Mm-hmm.
go, look, I'm going to trust that my quarterback's going to get up, but he's not going to have to deal with a defensive tackle rushing right up the middle at him. And that's what they do. They get the ball out in quick screens. They move the ball around. Like I said, without David Andrews, I don't see anybody on this offensive line that another team would make a move for. That's my
No,
big indicator. If
yes,
another team would not take anybody from yours, that's a great move to show that you've underdrafted and underdeveloped talent.
yeah, that's a barometer that I think is key as well. Because I hear people talk all the time about, well, this guy's good, this guy's okay, but well, does any other team even want that guy? And if they don't, then that's a great indicator that this guy probably isn't your long term
Yeah.
solution, right? Band aid maybe. Um, let me pose this question to you. I'm a big believer that you can't fix, even a good team usually can't fix everything in one off season anyway, right? You're going to have some position group somewhere you're going to be band aiding, right? You're going to kind of ride that through the next year. Just looking at offense here, let's say Drake May is the guy for the future. We know he is for next year. Let's even say for now that Ramondre Stevenson's playing running back for you. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but let's leave him there at running back. Between your wide receiver group and your offensive line, if you could only do a major upgrade on one and the other group would kind of get band-aided for another season, which group are you going to go after right away? Say with your top draft pick and maybe we even with some, hey, let's throw a little bit of cap space in there.
I mean, if you're the Patriots right now, I think this is the worst draft year you could ask for. There's not a ton of wide receivers that jump out to you.
Right.
People are talking about, a rumor that's floating around there is the New England Patriots basically just drafting Colorado. You get rid of Mayo, you get Deion Sanders as a coach, you draft Travis Hunter, you trade Drake May, you get Shedeur Sanders. Some of these are way
Wow.
out there. But
Wow.
the thing is, I don't think there's a standout offensive lineman where I would take as a top 10 pick. And I
Okay.
don't think there's a wide receiver that really sticks out to me. You got a lot of
Okay.
middle ground guys that either have
Hmm.
great speed but questionable hands,
Right.
or some decent size, but they really haven't turned it on. I mean, there's
Hmm.
nobody that sticks out to me that I'm going to go, hey, this is worth my pick. This might be a year where, you kind of sit on it, you drop back, pick up some pieces, and maybe I get two offensive linemen in the second round that I can maneuver and I can make the move. Um, with the cap space, am I looking, maybe can I get rid of some of these wide receivers, talk somebody else into thinking that they could turn them around, and then pull somebody out of it? Um, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think this year is a tough year. Last year, they needed to make the quarterback decision, of course, but I think you could have probably found a wide receiver sitting around that would have helped you out. I also thought there was some offensive linemen that deserve some higher grades and that have panned out well this year for their teams. But if it's me, I drop back and I would try to build up the offensive line first.
And see, and I would do the same thing. In my head, and I know I can't even fix the whole offensive line in one off season, right? But I don't like Drake May playing behind a line that's this dreadful. It, I figure I can get him a workable wide receiver somewhere, third round
Mm-hmm.
free agency, and I figure I can do a little bit better job scheming. But man, that offensive line is so absolutely dreadful right now. If I could only
Yeah.
upgrade one to a major extent, right? I think I'm going to pick offensive line. And I know the catching group is bad here, but I think that's what I would do. They'll try to do both. Obviously, you and I would try to do
Mm-hmm.
both. But again, just looking at priorities. You mentioned the cap space. Let's talk. Let's wrap up this Patriots talk here with a little bit of money talk. As of right now, the only two major free agents on the offensive side would be Austin Hooper, the tight end, and again, he's kind of more that tight end two guy, and then Demontre Jacobs, which not even sure we want him back, but those are the two free agents right now. Everybody else, if you wanted them back, you could get them. And then on the money side, Michael Onwenu is making a lot of money right now, $21.1 million. But if you step back off of that, you look at all the. By the way, these are the top five cap hits for the offensive side here for the audience to look at. But if you microscope off of that a little bit, they've only got about 65, $70 million invested in the entire offense for next year, like
Mm-hmm.
already looking at next year's cap numbers. So if they want to shift things around off the defense a little bit, just working with their overall cap space, they've got room to do it. It's not like some teams where they paid a lot, like last year's Chargers defense, where they were overpaying and underperforming. They just don't have a lot invested here anyway. So you kind of feel like, hey, we could invest a little bit of cap space on this side of the football, add in a couple of draft picks, and should see some upgrades on next year's offense. I don't feel like I'm stuck here financially, like say the Saints would be, or in some cases the Buccaneers, and even the Eagles kind of get a little boxed in sometimes. Patriots have not a lot of money invested here on the offensive side if they want to move things around.
Mm-hmm.
All right, final question for you here on the Patriots. Couple of backups. Anybody stand out that really you think next year might contribute more, or we just didn't mention tonight who at least deserves a mention on the offensive side of the football?
I mean, I think the thing that will come out of this, like you said, Ramondre Stevenson is the big question mark. So some of the backs that have filled in have been okay, um, but I think Ramondre Stevenson is a great change of pace backup back. If you're the Patriots and you decide, hey, we're going to build the offensive line and we go and try to find another running back, I think that would be probably their best bet. Like I said to you, I think the wide receiver group is all backups. I don't think they have one
Yeah,
one number one wide receiver.
yeah,
Um,
agreed.
and I think like Kendrick Bourne, I think with somebody that's actually a number one, I think you can use him. I think Keyshawn Bo,
Yeah,
I think those guys would be better as backups. So the real problem is that we have a bunch of backups and we don't have a single star. So it's hard for that backup would be, you know, a practice squad player on some of these other teams.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Patriots fans, if you're still with us, and listen, we didn't come in all rosy and cloudy. All right, this was an honest look, an honest assessment at what we've got, and hopefully over the next few months, Shane and I will revisit this several times and talk about what to do about it, how to get better. You can't get better if you're fooling yourself about what you've
Mm-hmm.
actually got. So again, this is just kind of end of year assessment. We'll do some more happier times looking forward here as to what we can do about it. All right. So, Shane, I really appreciate that. That's an excellent segue here into future Patriots talk. Next time we'll work on the defense. I've got a real special final 60 here tonight, final 60 seconds. It's a little bit of a sad one, but this one was important to me. So, Greg Gumbel, of course, just recently passed away, and he lived a full life. He did a lot of things, but I just wanted to mention him. I started watching sports right about 1989. And that was about the time Gumbel was working in sports for years before that. But 89, 90 was right about the time his career really just took off to untold heights with CBS and then NBC and then back to CBS. And he has been now for 30 some years a huge part of my viewing on every week. I mean, he did Major League Baseball in the early 90s when I was a kid. He was doing the CBS stuff with Terry Bradshaw. He would do the NCAA basketball stuff for years. He would work in the booth. Even going all the way back here with Jim Gray and Leslie Visser and Terry Bradshaw and several of the other people there at CBS. I watched him for decades, and I really enjoyed his work. I liked personally his work as a studio host even better than his announcer work. His announcer work was good. I always enjoyed it, and so for him passing, it makes me a little bit sad. We've all got to go at some point, and he certainly had his turn. But he was such a huge part of so many events that I enjoyed starting as a 9-year-old kid, basically, even till now. And so I really want to just mention him. And one little story I've got just personally, not that I met him, but listening to him back in the early 90s. He was working a game with Dan Deerdorf, but this isn't that game. But he partnered with Dan Deerdorf back in the early 90s. And the CBS cameras had turned to a view of the city. I don't remember the football game, what it was, but the cameras had turned to a view of the city, and they were showing all the beautiful leaves out there. And Dan Deerdorf was just admiring the leaves, talking about how beautiful it was, and I appreciate the leaves too. But you could hear Greg. It was Greg's turn to talk, and Greg Gumbel says, "They're dying, Dan. The leaves are dying." And Dan says, "Yeah, but it's mighty pretty, Greg." And that just was a great little glimpse of Greg Gumbel's humor. He didn't always show that on air, but that was one little glimpse of the humor that we always heard that he had. So hats off to him, a long career and a long life, and we're going to miss him in the studios. Shane, any thoughts on Greg Gumbel? If not, your final 60 seconds.
Well, yeah, to piggyback off of what you said, Ben, I think people who are true sports fans, a lot of it has to do with the broadcaster that they're linked to.
Yeah,
For me, like I won't football for me, John Madden will always be the
yeah,
voice of football. That's
right.
never going to change. It was always something about his personality, and it just drew you in. Was it always the most technical? Which is funny to think that him as a coach was very well thought of. But then he would
Right.
talk about turduckens and boom and smash, and those were the things. And I
Yes.
think that kind of got to where you could be the color guy and you could be a little zany. The thing that always, I think you said it about him as a studio for Gumbel, him on the selection show, he always did a great job of he would paint the picture and then he would let Dan Dockett and other people say whatever they wanted to say. And it was
Yeah.
his job to reel them in after they had made some statement. I think it's underrated when you're the guy that has to be the straight man in those
Right.
conversations. You can see it like on NBA when you have to have you're the straight man and it's your job to be the guy that talks Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal and Kenny the Jet down. It's not easy. It's not easy to play that role. And I thought that he did a great job. Um, in doing that, I think you all again. Uh, Broadcasting is a family tradition. You have the Gumbel brothers. For me, with baseball, it was always the Carey family.
Right.
TBS hit the Superstation, and then I also got WGN, so I literally watched a Carey call a baseball game
Yeah.
throughout my entire childhood. So those things are always what hit on me, and I think my 60 was basically just going to be, Happy New Year to everyone. Hope your holidays went well. But um, when you brought up Gumbel, I think the one thing that's made it difficult with the way that sports has become kind of more global and you're watching it on big stations is that those broadcasters that used to be regional, where you fell in love with a game because that guy was the one that you tuned into, and you always heard those names and you heard those
Yeah.
voices, and you're like, even the Yankees. Definitely not a Yankee fan, but Michael Kay, you hear those voices, you knew who he was going to be
Uh-huh.
on. You got used to hearing him all the time, and I think that that's a dying breed. Um, you don't have as many of those, and as sports stations are finding trouble being able to be linked right to teams. You're getting people that call national games, which it's great to have those people, but you're losing some of those homerisms that was
Right.
great as I was growing up.
Yeah, and what you said about Gumbel is perfect because he was a table setter. Whether he was a studio host or whether he
Hmm.
was an announcer, he was setting the table for the other guys. I mean, because you're right, he was the straight man. He was the guy who set up everybody else, and he was beautiful at it. I mean, just
Yeah.
just
If
fantastic.
if
So
you're a great play-by-play guy, you can have a
yeah,
terrible color guy, but he looks great because you do
right.
the job of painting the picture for everybody, and you let him come in and he gets to say like three things, and it makes it look like he's the one that knew it, but you're the one that
Right.
led him to water the whole time.
That is so true. I mean, I can't tell you how many color guys come in and I mean, they may be smarter than they appear, but some of them, not all of them, some of them are a little on the iffy side, and a great setup guy can make them look funny or brilliant or
Hmm.
whatever. Greg Gumbel was a master at that. A lot of the guys he worked with were good at their jobs, but some of them not so much. And listen, we're going to miss Greg Gumbel as well. One final note here. This before we get out of here. Happy New Year to everybody, as Shane said, and then our graphic design editor for this week and for several weeks now, Colin J. Parker. He's my son. He contributed a lot here on the graphic side of things. But anyway, those of you out there listening, really hope you have a fantastic 2025 whenever that starts. If it starts, after we've already broadcast this. Really appreciate you listening. We've got all kinds of things coming up during the NFL season. Next week, Austin plans to be back. We're also going to take a bit of a deep dive into the Carolina Panthers offensive line. We'll look at the actual start of the playoffs, and we got a lot of good stuff coming up for you all during the off season. Just really going to hit it hard. But we hope you have a fantastic new year. And thank you all for watching. Shane, any final thoughts before we sign off here?
No, like you said, everybody, if you get a chance to watch us before the ball drops, let us be one of the first ones to say Happy New Year for everybody.
All right. Have a great one, everybody. And we'll see you. And we got a lot coming up. Have a great one. Bye.